I don't know if you do, but
I think it just says, yeah, that it's recording.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm gonna just jump in. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for doing this, Matthew.
You're welcome.
I am just gonna jump in with the question and, go wherever it leads you. I don't feel like obligated to stick right on them. If it leads you to a different thought, let's go to that different thought. Okay.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
So I just wanted to sort of contextualize your beginnings. And so I
Yes.
thought I could ask if you could describe the sort of faith, your faith origin story, or the faith or religious environment you grew up in.
Yeah. So I was born Catholic, very
Oh,
large Irish Catholic family from, one of those families that has like 12 uncles, or great uncles, and then,
I didn't know that. I thought you were brought. I thought you were brought. I thought you were in a Protestant family.
well, yes. So we started Catholic and then we
Oh,
went from Catholic to Baptist and then from Baptist to Presbyterian. And that's where I spent most of my spiritual upbringing. And it
was
was a very,
Presbyterian.
yes, Presbyterian. And we had a very, like, it was very, we didn't do a whole lot of religious stuff until I was about 11 or 12. And that's when we jumped into, that's when my dad and I moved, and my stepmom moved to northern Houston. And we went to a Presbyterian church there. And that's where I was there for all of my middle school and high school days. And I was very involved in that church. It was a very welcoming church, very, like, I would classify it liberal, even though, I mean, it's, that classification with religion can be a little tricky sometimes,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was a very welcoming church and like very, I think, kind of intellectually minded. Like the minister there was very well read, and he had great sermons that were just really like made you think a lot. And I would kind of classify them kind of like bookish in a weird way. Like they're not like there was no fire and brimstone or no. I wouldn't even say there's a lot of high passion on any front. It was just kind of there to make you think and kind of these great stories from the Bible that were just like really fascinating. And he had a great way of kind of explaining them in a way that was appealing to me as a teenager. But I was also like a very rebellious teenager. So my brother and I would sometimes get dropped off to Sunday school and we would, cut out to get some hamburgers or something, or some buffalo wings. There's two great restaurants not far from that church, and we would often get caught skipping by the elders of the church and stuff. But I loved it. I mean, I think back on those days fondly. It was a really great environment to have grown up in. And I think just me going to Buddhism at some point wouldn't have happened if I hadn't kind of had a more. I mean, it was such a welcoming, kind of thought-provoking environment that it kind of eventually would help me feel okay going to something like Buddhism or whatever.
Yeah. So it was thoughtful, maybe intellectual a little bit, or bookish, you said.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Did you have like a home practice, or was it primarily like you go to church, you do church things at church, maybe youth group or Sunday school, and I don't know, an occasional, and then maybe the holidays or something. Was that the primary
Yeah.
orientation, or?
Yeah, definitely. Like we would do the Sunday obviously, and we went most days, most Sundays. Um, and on top of that, I was in the choir. I was in the youth choir there, and um, we also did some I got, I don't remember what the term is, but like when you get, I was gonna say committed. That's not the right word, but like you become a part of the church as a youth. I did that whole process.
Confirmed.
Yes, confirmed. Yes, and um, but on top of
Committed is
that, like,
funnier though.
yes, well, committed, absolutely. And like, and I think, but also my household growing up with my dad and stepmom and my brother was very, we were encouraged to think and talk about spirituality, politics outside the house at dinner. We would just have these really great discussions while we're eating dinner about religion and.
I mean, were you free to ask questions, like ask
Oh yeah,
questions, have doubt, all that stuff?
absolutely. In fact, we were encouraged to have all those, to ask questions. And even though we were a Presbyterian family, we went to Colorado a lot, and on those drives to Colorado and even in the mountains, we would have these really deep discussions that were, you know, I would classify them now as like kind of more Eastern oriented, even though I don't think my dad would have contextualized it as such. I think he had a very broad and kind of amazing view of God and spirituality that I think fed into, like the Presbyterian maybe was almost like the church that we were going to was such a, like it was the kind of closest to what he maybe aligned with at the time. But I wonder if, because he died in 2003, if like how that would have morphed and changed over time, like if maybe he kind of would have, like if I had talked to him about these Buddhist things, like what he would have thought. But yeah, it was definitely very broad and very welcoming to all kind of thoughts. And like I remember this one occasion where I had this friend, he was Muslim, and we were driving somewhere. My dad was driving us, and he was asking him questions and just kind of curious about it. And like, my name is Matthew, and this is kind of a stupid story, but my name is Matthew. My brother's name is Luke, so we're obviously named after two of the apostles. And it was so Matthew in the car, Luke in the car, and my friend Raheem in the car. And he says, and he said, he says one of y'all is reading the wrong book, but he didn't mean it wrong book. He just kind of framed kind of hard, just kind of made a bad joke. And he's like, I don't mean that wrong book, and he was really apologetic. And he's like, it's all the same, it's all these different books that go to the same source. So he was very kind of welcoming on that front.
Love that.
Yeah.
I can see, I didn't obviously never met your dad, but I can see the sort of fluster correction, like, no,
Yes.
no, I didn't mean that
Yes.
that way.
Absolutely.
Okay, so thinking about you now, and I saw your post, I don't know, I guess it was like maybe a year and a half ago, where you started posting about, just not a lot, but I saw some, I don't know, actually know how long ago it was, but I remember seeing something like, I don't always talk about this, but like, I'm really finding myself like more and more comfortable saying, this is who I am, this is what I'm exploring, this is where I'm sitting.
Yeah.
And so, can you think, was there a particular moment, or was there an experience or a sort of season in your life that really started directing you towards exploring Buddhism more seriously? Or did it unfold like gradually over lots and lots of years?
Yeah, for sure. I think it kind of gradually unfolded. While I was in the military, I read a book by the Dalai Lama called The Art of Happiness. And it was like I've always been very like a sponge when it comes to religious stuff. Like I've always I love reading about all the religions, to be honest. But like when I saw this book on the bookshelf or at the bookstore, I was like, yeah, okay, the Dalai Lama, I've heard of him. And The Art of Happiness, like, the guide to like how to be happy. And I'm like, okay, well, that's such an interesting idea. Like, it's not one that's kind of promoted all that much, just how to be happy as a person. And I picked it up and I read it, and it was a really good kind of primer. He's like, this is what Buddhism is, it's about the cessation of suffering. And I was like, okay, that's really interesting. And I loved the book, and it was very transformative. And I read not long after that the autobiography of the Dalai Lama, which was very fascinating in and of itself too. Because I've always been also fascinated by politics and passive resistance, and Gandhi, all that kind of stuff, and of which he definitely similar mold. But I kind of, I read that stuff, and I was, even back then I would say, okay, I guess I'm kind of Buddhist because all these things I kind of believe in. And it's like I agree with a lot of this, but it didn't really become, I kind of put it on the shelf to a certain extent. And even though I kind of agreed with a lot of it, I didn't really think much about it, even though I still thought about a lot of religious stuff. And over the intervening decades, I would, on occasion, just kind of like check in on the Buddhist stuff. I would kind of read just other things, or I would read articles, and sometimes I'd even go to Wikipedia and just read the definition of things. But it wasn't until a few years ago that I kind of had like a personal crisis of sorts, and where I was just kind of like, I don't really know who I am. and there's other things going on that I probably shouldn't say out, but um, like this kind of system-wide crash, and the politics of the situation wasn't helping, and this kind of the world felt very tumultuous, and so the personal and the social were kind of crashing all in. It's like I need to get something
Yeah.
that's concrete, and I really jumped into Buddhism full with both feet, and um yeah, and just kind of like I've read everything I could read, and um not everything I could read. I've read a lot of stuff, and I'm continuing to read. I'm like, and it just kind of like and this, maybe we'll answer these questions later, but like it kind of had this calming effect on me, and like it kind of centered me a lot more, and kind of psychologically kind of rewired my brain in a way that like I really needed at the time, and it's kind of calmed me out a little bit. But yeah, so that's a few years ago. It was just kind of a personal and social kind of system resetting that I just felt like I needed to make, and kind of be a lot more conscientious with it.
I think it's really interesting that you sort of had the early part of your adulthood intro though,
Hmm.
and like a sort of like quiet, like, yeah, this is me.
Yes,
This is me, but then never really like, I don't know, fully like owning it or making it part of your daily life. But like, yeah, if I was gonna align with a thought or a, I don't know, yeah, system of thought or belief, maybe this is more me.
for sure, for sure.
That's interesting. So um, when you read those books from the Dalai, either the one from The Art of Happiness and then the one about the Dalai Lama, so those
Hmm.
sort of beginning practices, or even later now, when you started like when you're going through this like, yeah, all of this tumult and all of this time, and you're thinking like, let me dive into this. Maybe there's something here for me. Was there a practice that was helpful? Was there like a particular experience or philosophy that really stood out as calming for you or helpful for you?
Yeah, definitely. And I know like
Or a
Buddha,
book or a person or something?
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, definitely all the above actually. Buddhism is always kind of tricky on some levels because there's such a strong emphasis on meditation.
Mm,
And meditation for me is really hard because my brain's always just like, and so like for me to like, I do meditate, but I don't meditate in the way most Buddhists meditate, where they have like, sometimes they'll have mantras that they are kind of repeating to themselves, or they'll be meditating on like, they're called koans. They're kind of like individual story, like they're little snippets of a story that you kind of supposed to make you think. They're like logical and spiritual in nature
mm,
usually. So when I meditate, my meditation's a lot more just kind of like I'm just going to go to like I'm like because like a lot of meditation, even in Buddhism, is it's very like you have to sit a certain way and your hands have to be a certain way and you gotta
yeah.
and for me that doesn't work for me. So for when I meditate and I do it often-ish, I'll go to a kind of a quiet space on a bench outside, even in my room, just kind of sitting on the ground. I don't cross my knees because I'm like that it hurts my knees,
Mm,
and I just kind of go quiet. And for me, like it usually takes a few minutes for my brain to kind of be like, okay, you don't, just be here, like focus on your breath, all that kind of stuff. And it does take time, but after a few minutes, I'm able to kind of just kind of calm myself. So that's kind of the secondary thing. But what's been the most kind of Buddhist-ish practice that I kind of do all the time is trying to be more mindful about things. And
mm,
for me, mindfulness always begins with like taking a step back and like, I'm feeling this right now. Why am I feeling this way? And kind of taking that, just pulling that thread until I get to the end of that string, usually.
mm.
And for me, the mindfulness thing, sometimes my Irishness kind of comes out and I'm like, no, I'm going to comment on this Facebook thing and blow up this thread, but for the most part, it's kind of been a really great influence on me. I'm like, I don't need to always be weighing in. I need to like, if like I always relate to social media because that's kind of how a lot of us relate to one another these days. If like I'm on threads sometimes and I'm like, why like this is doing nothing but stressing me out. And the Buddhism has kind of taught me to be like, this is stressing me out. why is it stressing me out? Like, let's get to the core of like what's happening here. Do I need to be attached to every single thing that's happening? And there's also, yeah, that's the other side of the Buddhist thing that like been really important for me is the attachment side of like, you know, like the clinging of to these beliefs that I have and these clinging to like ideas of how people should be and like I'm not making any sense,
No,
but
you're
like
making total sense. You're making total sense.
it's like sometimes I just feel like yeah. So for me, the mindfulness, as far as like taking account of my emotions, and it's helped me become a more calm person. Helped me become a little bit less in your face to certain things, and kind
Yeah.
of like letting go and kind of feeling healthier, I guess, on a lot of fronts. And but also the attachment side of like being attached to people, being attached to ideas, being attached to the way things should be, just kind of letting go of all of that. It's really sometimes it can be kind of unmooring in a weird way. Where you're like, I don't even know what I believe anymore. Like, but sometimes it's been really freeing and feeling calming to not have to feel like every single idea or thought needs to just kind of have my involvement in it or something, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do know, and I think social media is it. It is something that comes up so often. I think relationally, that's how you and I first connected, so it makes sense. But especially because we did in a very, very volatile political moment that hasn't seemed to settle ever.
Hmm.
And I get it. I mean, I get that I've had recently too, not motivated by Buddhism, but I've recently had these like I definitely feel like the way I interact on social media in general, there are peaks and valleys for me. But in
Yes, for sure.
general, on a daily basis, has changed so much because
Yes.
there's so many times where I'm like, not do I care or do I not care, but is my engagement in this way
Yes.
going to make any kind of difference? And if
Right.
it's not, what is it doing but riling me up, creating
Yes.
more division? Like what am I doing? You know what I
Yes.
mean? And so
For sure.
yeah, I'm constantly sort of checking in with myself with that, which I guess is mindfulness, and I don't always land right,
Right. No,
but
for sure.
I
For sure.
definitely feel like there's practice involved in that. Like, okay, and sometimes I'll write out a thing
Yes.
and then I won't post it.
Oh, I've done that
I'll
so many times.
Yeah,
Yes.
because then in the end, I'm like, am I going to want to keep arguing this back? Is this going to do something that gives me any peace? No.
Yes,
It's
for sure.
so yeah.
Yes.
Do you consider that like a conversion for you, a realignment, or does that none of those words, do those words not work for this?
One second, let me tell my son that, hey, Logan, I'm on a call. Could you turn the music down a little bit? He just woke up from a nap. Could you repeat that question one more time? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
do you consider this like a conversion or alignment, or do those not work
Yeah.
for
No, I
you
definitely
really?
think in like alignment would be the best, most accurate kind of description of that because in some ways, like Buddhism almost kind of like like it's almost its own separate, unique, almost psychological thing that
Totally.
like I feel like Jesus could have been a like
Absolutely.
the Buddha was a person, but like achieving enlightenment is something that we can all that we all can strive for, like, and how we do that. Like there's a lot of uniformity between like a lot of the different religions and like
I have a
you
lot of
know
Jewish Buddhist friends, Jew
oh,
Buddhist.
for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think there's so for me it was almost like a like getting on a path as opposed to getting on a whole like not even like staying on the path I was on, but like just seeing more of the sights and not like a whole
Mm.
new path
More of the
altogether.
sites is such a good way to put it.
Yes.
I love that. So do you have like a kind that you're doing? Like, are you more connected to Tibetan Buddhism, or do you find yourself on a particular path with Buddhism, or is it more general?
Yeah, it's probably more general, but probably the Mahayana path, which I think is more
Hmm.
like Japan and like there's a few other but that's kind of more like I feel like enlightenment's the goal, obviously, and like and I always joke around, one of the great things about Buddhism is how, like, hey, if I don't get it this lifetime, then maybe I'll get it the next one. So
Yeah.
like it kind of eased this kind of like existential thing that I think happens with some religions where you're like, oh, like my death is the end point. I need to get good by the time that I die, or else, like, because I need to.
Or else.
Yeah, yes, exactly. And I think the thing about Buddhism is like, just try this new stuff, try these new paths, try these new ways of thinking, and if you don't get it this time, maybe the next go around, and I can just kind of release this existential dread off my shoulders that I
Yeah.
didn't even know I was carrying, but like it just kind of feels like it's a lot more freeing in a certain way.
That
And
sounds
not that
lovely.
like yeah, not that I ever grew up with hell or anything, like, there's not a, most of the modern religions don't really have the kind of modern concept of hell like the way that we kind of think of it, but
I
um
don't know what you're talking about. As a Catholic, I have no idea what you're talking about. Hell is very in my face. Yeah.
yes, exactly, yeah, for sure, for sure. And I just read The Exorcist, and that was definitely one of those
Yeah.
huge, yeah, huge parts of that story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things that has always like, I don't know, I shared this with my class that I've maybe always even gotten in the way of my any attempts I had to explore Buddhism, because I've
Hmm.
always been curious, religiously curious,
For sure.
culturally curious person, but it's always gotten in my way, is the idea of attachment. And that, I think,
Yes.
is because of a really deep misunderstanding that I had
Yes.
until relatively recently about what the idea of non-attachment
Yes.
was. So let me just set this up just a smidge, is that I had always thought to myself, sort of like, well, of course we love people. Of course we're
Right.
attached. Of course we want them around us, where we want them to live long lives, or we want to see them grow up, or all of these things. Like, what in the world would we want to separate ourselves from that desire, and it felt very, like, kind of cold to me. It
Yes.
felt like that was like a cold way of connecting to people you love, non-attachment.
Yes.
And then I read just a couple weeks ago this. I think it was like, honestly, it might have been a Reddit post, if I'm honest with you, and it was but it was about this, and it was like, because I was sort of Googling, and I'm trying to figure out, because we were studying Buddhism, and I was just still like, had a block. Anyway, and the thing that I read explained it this way, that, like, when your child is very young,
Hmm.
when you walk them across the street, when you walk with them, you're holding their hand, and when you walk them across the street, you hold their hand, because it's important during that time of their lives that you're teaching them how to walk across the street and
Hmm.
do it safely, but you're also, like, physically needed. You're needed there to hold
Hmm.
hold on to them.
Hmm.
And then, and later, maybe a few years later in their lives, you're present, but they're learning how to walk without you, and you're watching them, and sort of making sure and reminding them to do the things they need to do. And then eventually you let them play outside, and you're making some assumption that they've learned those lessons, and they're walking across each street safely, and you've surrendered to the idea that you've done what you needed to do in these earlier parts, and they should be able to do that. And then eventually in their lives, they're walking around the planet, and you don't know what streets they're crossing or not crossing at all.
Yes.
And you're not thinking, oh my God, they've crossed streets today, I hope they did that safely. You're just thinking of them as the wholeness of their lives. And so the attachment, like, the non-attachment, is not that you don't hold their hands ever. It's that you're not attached to them needing you to hold their hands forever. And
Precisely.
that, like, that loving them is allowing them to live freer and freer lives, which does not mean you never have a desire to be near them, but that you're purposely letting them go in certain ways.
Yes.
And that was really incredibly moving and helpful for me, especially in this moment where I'm having this very real sadness about my daughter
Yes.
leaving, and thinking, right, but look at, like, she's doing this big exciting thing that she needed all of the things she needed me for in order to get there, and this is like a good thing. Anyway, so that's my long-winded way of saying this is a sticking point for me. So I'm sort of curious as a man, as a husband, as a father, how those teachings, and as a son, how those teachings of attachment and non-attachment changed the way you related to your loved ones. You've talked a little bit about how they maybe changed how you related to politics or the broader world, but how do you think that interacts with how you feel about your kids or how you interact with them, and what's been sort of surprising or challenging about that?
For sure. And attachment is a very difficult, yeah, very difficult for me because I'm very like, I, my dad was very controlling. My
Mm,
mom is in a weird way kind of controlling too. Like, I have a lot of controlling tendencies. Like, I mean, we've even been in this, Facebook debates where I'm like, why are you thinking this? Like
yeah.
these kind of very like regimented ideas of like how everyone needs to conform to like what I think, and this weird kind of like, and every single time I would have one of those discussions, or any time I would ever be in this situation where like I felt like my domineering tendencies would take over, A, never felt good. B, I always felt like I wasn't doing things the right way.
Yeah.
And like I was never hearing anybody. I was never like I was not being empathetic. I was not being sympathetic either. Just kind of like I wasn't seeing this person as a whole person. I was kind of this felt like my narrative had to be the narrative for everybody. And I think with the
I don't think
Buddhism,
you even feel a satisfaction of a win
oh no,
when you do that.
exactly. Yeah, like even theoretically, like what let's say hypothetically, like I changed someone's mind on something, like it was always felt like really shitty. Like it just felt
Hmm.
like, and like like I just didn't feel like I was seeing this person as a whole person, and like so um all that to say that attachments and unattachment for me is very hard because I sometimes have to fight against my own psychology in a weird way. And which is also, I mean, sometimes like when I'm like, that's why Buddhism sometimes is kind of hard for me because it's like there is a lot of like psychological stuff, and there's a lot of like going inside your own head a lot, which can be in some ways, I've seen this happen not for a lot of people when they go more into their own heads, they kind of become more of a like a dick about, like they're not learning the right lessons, like they get more controlling about
Yeah.
things because they feel like their thoughts are the only, Um, but I really do think like so like an example of like one of my children like you know like one of the things I do like about the Mahayana tradition is that there's these things called bodhisattvas, and they're basically people like they're basically spiritual teachers, and like anyone can kind of achieve that status.
Mm.
And I feel like for me with my children, that's kind of like my goal is like I'm there to give them these to tell you to impart wisdom in them when I can, and tell them these, help them think about things in a new way. But like they really have to go out there and like live their life in order to like believe whatever it is that they're going to believe, even if it's not what I believe. Um, I'm not sure what I'm trying to say, but like it is hard for me, but it is one that like I like the more I let go, the more I actually kind of like love people in a weird way.
Yeah.
Like it's made me a better listener, like being this it's made me a better communicator, it's made me a better like more empathetic person to not feel like I need to get my narrative across. I let go of the idea that I had to do that, and just kind of like I want to hear what this person has to say, and I'm just going to give them my full attention. And even if I don't have anything to say back, I'm
Yeah.
like maybe the thought will come days down the road, and then we, but like um
Well,
yeah,
I think like about my daughter example, when she first told me, I mean, I was happy for her, I was proud of her, but if I'm honest, internally, a lot of it, I thought, why is she doing this to me? Like,
yes,
doesn't she want to live close to her mother? We've been close this whole time. I would
Sure.
want to live by my family. And and it's such a silly, like, wasn't about me. This wasn't about leaving me or not leaving me. This was about living her life. But I was so attached to this meaning of
Yes.
what her being close physically, like proximally, like meant,
Yes.
and what it would mean about our relationship. I even thought, I wonder if other people are going to think we're not close, because who moves away from their family
Sure.
if
Sure.
they're
Yeah.
close, which is such a gross thought. Like, but um, I think it's so interesting that I think attachment, not attachment. I love that you're talking about it sort of like a stretch, like
Hmm.
like not just a practice, but like it's hard and it'll
Oh, it's
probably
very
continue
hard.
to be hard, but I don't know, maybe worth it, you
Well,
know?
yeah, and I think one of the things about Buddhism is and mindfulness is that, like there are no bad thoughts. Like in my
Mm,
opinion, those thoughts you have, they're very natural thoughts to have. And it's like and that's where the mindfulness for me would come in, like, okay, I need to poke and prod this thought and see what it
mm,
actually is, and like, but I would push back that it's a bad thought. I think it's a very natural thought, and like it's a very um it just like it makes sense. Because sometimes like we have to take our own upbringing into account and our own
yeah.
life experiences and stuff. Yeah, but it's such a hard thing to do. I mean, mindfulness is such a hard thing for me to because I'm also very emotional person, and I'm very like when I'm happy, I'm very happy. When I'm sad, I'm very sad. And it's like sometimes when you're in an emotional state, it's hard to be like, okay, I want to dissect this,
Yeah.
like it's hard to kind of it almost feels like you're stepping back and kind of like which sometimes it's exhausting in its own right to be like, I don't want to think about why I'm thinking, like but yeah, it's like I think that's for me where the mindfulness comes in and being like, okay, I'm having this thought about like I'm very frustrated by something Chloe or Logan did. Like why am I feeling that? And like it feels like you've done that like in a really great way, like
Doing it. Yeah.
yeah, for
Not,
sure, for
it's not
sure.
done.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, okay. So then I want to ask, so those are things that sort of, we talked about mindfulness and even meditation and definitely attachment as things that are maybe really valuable, but are work in some ways. Like you're
for
having,
sure.
yeah, they're practices or exercises that you're having to sort of stretch and work. Are there things in Buddhism that you feel really easily at home in, things that feel like that, that don't feel quite as unsettled or tense for you, that this feels like a relief to some degree?
Yeah, like I feel like there's a strong emphasis on Buddhism on empathy, and that's true of all religions. I mean, we're not all, but a lot of religions that are just like it really is a strong, but there is such a strong undercurrent that like these people like the Buddha would talk to everybody, criminals, the poor, the rich, and like because that's the whole one of the tenets of Buddhism is that life is struggle and everyone has struggle, and like the rich, the poor, everyone's going to have a life is going to be suffering, like
Yeah.
the cessation of suffering is what we're all striving for. So it's like, and the only way to do that is by having a strong empathetic sense of like maybe not like empathy, but having a strong understanding that like everyone's going to be having these different backgrounds and different understandings of the world and different um upbringing and different decisions that we're all going to make. And like if I had been put in that same exact situation, would I be making the same exact decisions? And I think for me, I've always kind of felt like very tied to that idea of like, well, not always, but it's been there for a while of like trying to understand everyone. And maybe this is where the AA, like I grew up in an AA household, and maybe that's definitely part of that like codependency stuff. But like, whatever, I don't know what I'm trying to say. But yeah, it's yeah, for me that's always kind of come very naturally, kind of
Yeah.
like yeah. And where I get in where I would get in trouble back in the day, especially, is where I would um when I would be not seeing that other person as a full person and not understanding where they're coming from and not listening to what they're saying. And so for me, that was always like going against my very nature when I would do that to somebody. And that's one of the reasons why a couple years ago was like having that system-wide crash. I'm like, I'm not hearing people. I'm not like I feel very outside of my own body or whatever, or outside of
Yeah,
my
I
own,
feel like
yeah,
I had a real experience like this lately. Like, I think it reads like as if my politics are shifting, and I don't know that they actually are, but what has shifted in me recently is this idea that that there's bad people, like
right,
bad people and good people, and
yeah,
and that if I was in their shoes, I would do something different, and I'm not convinced I would. And I'm
right,
starting to sort of also, I think in our world, and I think I'm saying ours in like are sort of shared in some ways. I know we have some differing stuff, but in like a broader way, our sort of shared sort of progressive-y, lefty kind of political circle, I think it is so it's such a it's come so much easier for me to see the humanness in like diverse people that I'm not like, but what I mean by that is like racial or gender or
mm-hmm,
ethnicity or
mm-hmm,
something like that, because that's a practice that as a progressive I've gotten used to sort of checking in with myself. Is this a bias that's showing up for me? I'm
sure,
not saying I do that well either, but I'm used to that being the challenge that I'm willing to do. Do you know what I mean?
yes,
That I
for
know
sure,
that's the job of me and my privilege, right? What I've not ever really done is realize that when we're talking about like the humanness or the wholeness of a person, that people on the farthest the farthest political polar than me,
mm-hmm,
that's the challenge I've never done, to see like their full humanness. Do you know what I
yes,
mean?
for sure, for absolutely,
And even like our political boogeymen like Trump or like these people, like I do believe in a creator God, so this isn't exactly Buddhism, but if I believe in the idea that we're all children of God, that includes him
oh, for sure,
all the way, not just
yeah,
kinda. And so then that's been the biggest, like, how can I figure out how to oppose an idea
right,
without opposing a whole human being? And
yes,
and I don't know exactly what I'm saying, but that has been a real challenge for me over the last 3 or 4, probably like 5 years. And I think though, to the outside person, it looks like my whole political world is shifting. And I think it's just how I'm orienting myself to people.
no, for sure. I mean, and that's why, I mean, there was literally no one that the Buddha or Jesus wouldn't talk to, and I think
Yeah.
there's kind of like a righteous, like I feel like politics, if someone were to view them, would say, oh, they shifted as well. But I feel like in some ways, like I saw this interesting headline the other day, or not headline, it was a book about Mexico and how like we didn't cross the border, the border crossed us.
Yeah.
I feel like that about my politics sometimes. Like my politics has kind of stayed where it's always kind of been, but like the left, and I'll just say the left because I'm a part of it, has gotten very self-righteous and very,
Mm-hmm. Puritan.
yeah, like in a way that's yeah, yeah, it's very puritanical in a weird way, and it's very like we're viewing our opposition like they're our enemy, and and there are very real differences and are very distinct black and white things that like are very hard to come across from the political aisle, but like sometimes like I like before I clicked on this, I saw this headline about like Bernie Sanders talking to Jon Stewart about how Trump has actually enacted a lot of Bernie Sanders's policies,
Yeah.
and it's like so there's obviously something that's like appealing to our opposition, um, that like if I just view them all as these MAGA whatever, then like I'm not listening to them as people, you know what I mean? And I'm just kind of writing them off as, and like that's not what we should be doing.
Right.
And but on the very religious level, I mean, I've always felt like um, no one should be above or below being having a conversation with. I mean, and I know that's kind of very tricky, like very, very tricky. But like when we start viewing the people on the other side of us as others, then we start having these really, really contentious, kind of dangerous precedences that are hard to walk back.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
see that. Yeah.
Do you think, just, I don't want to pull too much of Christianity or other faith traditions into this conversation, but because you started in a home that at least self-identified as Christian,
Hmm.
do you feel there are aspects of that origin tradition that like still sort of live in you ethically or live in you spiritually? Like, are
Oh
there
yeah.
teachings or images of Jesus that resonate with the Buddhist concepts you found? Like, do you know what I mean? Is
No,
there
for sure.
harmony with between them at all?
Yeah, like, and this has been kind of one of the most curious, interesting things for me personally to poke and prod in these past few years of exploring my Buddhism is that I feel like it's really given me this profound love of like all these different religious faiths. Like I've really like explored so many different religions on everything from YouTube to books, just like I want to read more about like Sikhism and
Yeah.
Judaism and Islam, and like it's really made me just really appreciate all these faiths so much more. Like it's kind of opened my heart in an interesting way that I wasn't anticipating. And I've like, but on the Christian front especially, I think it's made me a better Christian in an interesting way. Like, it's just kind of really opened my heart. Like I really feel like everything that's in that book that Jesus was saying is pretty much right on. I mean, and like he was very like, I don't remember who said it. I think it was a Thich Nhat Hanh was saying about Jesus that he would have been he had a lot of Buddha nature, or whatever the quote is. Like there's a lot of Buddha nature in Jesus. Like he was very like, um, like we were saying, he would listen to everybody. He would like, I always get the impression when I read the Gospels that he was a very calm person. He had his moments, you know,
Yeah, he had
flipping table.
zones.
Yeah, for sure. But he was,
But you're
yeah,
right.
like, yeah, like a very calm person. So which means he probably like, and prayer is its own kind of form of meditation in an
Yeah.
interesting way. And like, so I feel more connected to Christianity now as a Buddhist than I maybe did even as a kid who was, you know, textbook Christian kind of only.
Interesting. I do have a book at home that I bought. I love Thich Nhat Hanh. Um, when I had a lot of more discomfort with Buddhism, I still like Thich Nhat Hanh,
Sure.
mainly because he helped me uh, want to do my dishes. Such
Oh
a
yeah.
stupid thing, but
No.
there was like a meditation where he was talking about just sort of the like, I don't know if you would have used the word holiness, but in my language I would have, but sort of the value of these everyday
Yes.
things we do, and I remember reading that in my early 20s, and then every time I clean a dish, it is in my head, like the feeling the dish and the water on my hands and the like,
For
all
sure.
the sensory part of doing these things, and the value of it. Anyway, but he wrote a book. I bet you this is what you're talking about, called Living Buddha, Living
Yes.
Christ. And
Yep.
I have
Yep.
it at
I
home, but
love
I
that
haven't read
book.
it
Yeah.
yet. But
It's a
yeah.
great book. It's a very easy read. It's a great book for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's so much. That's one of the great things about Buddhism is that I think any religious person of any religious faith could be a Buddhist because it's in an interesting way almost its own kind of like it's a spiritual leaning or it's a psychological resetting and not necessarily like like if you were to do nothing but follow like the kind of basic it's called the eightfold path. I mean, I always use the analogy that it's like our version of like the Ten Commandments, but it's not really they're not commandments, but they're like live a right life, have right thought, have all these other things. Like, I mean, if you were to do nothing but that, you would hit most of the stuff that like,
It helps the targets. Yeah.
yeah, for sure, for sure.
Um, do you, let me just look through this because I
Yeah,
want to be
yeah.
conscious of time, but
That's
All right, we talked about this at the beginning. I think this is a tough one, but also the point, I think. So
Hmm.
how has your understanding of suffering changed through this journey?
It
Or has it?
so that book that I read back in the Marines, that was one of the major things that I pulled from that book was that like life is life is suffering, life is struggle. Like, and that's when I read that at the time, it kind of clicked into place that idea that maybe I had before that like we're all kind of suffering these, we all have our battles that we're all fighting, we're all having these ups and downs, we're all, like um so for me it's kind of when I read that it kind of clicked into place that this thought that I've cemented in my head over the next few decades of like just that like we're everyone's gonna have because the other part of Buddhism that I really like is the impermanence, like like nothing is permanent, like we only have the right now moment
Mm.
of like so we're all gonna have death in our life, we're all gonna have hunger, we're all gonna be hungry at some point, we're all gonna be these things that like and that's um we're all gonna feel greedy, we're all gonna this all the different things that we're all gonna kind of struggle with like I just think it's a beautiful thing that like that idea that have it really just at the forefront of my head, just thinking about like that we each have this like thing that we're kind of each have to deal with, and like the Buddhism, like how to end suffering is kind of through non-attachment basically of I don't even know. I'm trying to say I'm kind of talking myself into circles sometimes. I'm
No, you're not.
yeah.
You get in your head about it, but you're not. It's totally trackable. No, you're not. It's so helpful for me to hear about it. I mean, I think the suffering thing, right? If life is suffering, I'll often feel sorry for myself, right? I think like that, like it's probably a meme that I read, but the idea that life is just like one, like little breaks in between one shitty thing after the
Yes.
other shitty thing,
Yes,
right?
exactly. Yes.
And it does feel like, but I feel very sorry for myself about that. I'm
Hmm.
like sort of like the other one where it's just adulthood is just get up, do dishes, cook, like pick, but I don't know, it might be peaceful in a certain way to be like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's
No, for sure.
true. Right.
Yes.
And so like instead of feeling sorry about that, maybe I'd notice the gap a little more in between the moments of suffering. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, and that's the attachment side, I think, of like these shitty moments. Like one of my favorite things, and this even goes beyond Buddhism, is like when I'm feeling sad to bookmark it with the mindfulness of like, I have sadness right now. Okay, why am I sad? And you kind of like, oh, okay, that's curious. And sometimes the sad days compile on top of themselves. And I used to really stress out about that, but the impermanent side of like, well, this will pass. I mean, I know there's a lot of stuff that could, there's
No, but that's yeah.
there's chemicals that we all, that could sometimes mean it doesn't pass, but like for the most part, the sadness will pass, and and then I'll be happy, and or I'll feel a different emotion, and not feeling like I'm feeling weighted down by, oh, I feel sad, like what does this all mean? Like, am I gonna be sad forever? Like, no, this is just what I'm feeling right now, and I usually if I kind of step back, oh, this is why I'm feeling this way, and okay, all right, this makes sense, and I'm just gonna exist in the sadness for a while, and then it'll pass,
Yeah, it
because
makes so
yeah,
much sense. I was just thinking about my daughter, her boyfriend that they've been together for like 8 years, and they'll get married. They just never did. They haven't yet. But I always get so scared, for her because she's never been in love before him.
sure,
And I think they're meant for good, honestly. But
yeah,
um, I almost wish that she had had a heartbreak before, like in high
yes,
school, because
yes,
I don't think on an emotional level, my daughter is fully aware that heartbreak is survivable. Do you know what
yes,
I'm saying?
yes, for
And
sure,
so, like, we need to go through those things to know later that it is awful and you
yes,
don't want to go through it. And most of the time, it's survivable. You'll
oh,
get to
for
the other
sure,
side. And I think
absolutely,
that's sort of what that idea of suffering, like being sort of that impermanence of suffering, but the reality of like the impermanence and constancy of suffering is such an interesting sort of paradox. But anyway,
Absolutely. No,
yeah.
for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Um, if someone told you they were curious about Buddhism, I am. So if someone told you they were curious about Buddhism but hesitant to move away from their faith of origin, what would you tell them? Like if I wanted to stay Catholic, but I also want to know everything about, I'm curious
Yeah.
about Buddhism, what would you say to me?
I mean, I honestly think Thich Nhat Hanh is he's a good gateway drug. He's
Hmm.
like, and when I had that kind of system reset a few years ago, someone like a Buddhist recommended, I don't remember which book off the top of my head it was, but it was a very just like, it was one of his books, but it was just really like, I just like it's one that I actually like listened to as an audiobook.
Hmm.
And I was just like, okay, like this is exactly what I was needing. So I really just do think just kind of jumping into a book like that, or even like, and this is maybe even way woo woo kind of spiritual nonsense, but
It's
like,
okay. I like woo.
yeah, sometimes I like just go meditate, just
Hmm.
kind of think about your breath, think about your or don't think about your breath, but just focus on your breath and just kind of see where your brain takes you, like because that's what Buddhism initially was. It was a guy a very rich prince who tied himself to a tree basically, and um, just thought about the nature of suffering, and so maybe even like just kind of take some time to just kind of like meditate on some things and just kind of see where your thoughts take you, and like
It
to
sounds
see.
scary to me a little bit, if I'm
No,
honest.
for sure. It and like I said, meditation for me is really hard. Like I really have a hard time with it because my brain's always going, and it's like, yeah, like when I ever get to a good meditative state where I'm just kind of like present in the moment and not like thinking about all the 10,000 things I have to do, no matter if it lasts 1 minute or 10, I always come out of it just feeling so much better than when I had first started it. So even like if you weren't ever to read a single idea about Buddhism, didn't read any of the Eightfold, Path, the Four Noble, any of that stuff, just meditating, it's such a high reward thing that, that's such a good reset. And it doesn't have to be like anything profound. It doesn't have to be like, on a mat with, music playing and stuff, incense and all that kind of stuff. It could just be like on a park bench, or it could be in your house just with, with the lights off or whatever, just kind of
Hmm.
like, I really think that in and of itself is a form of what we call Buddha nature, just kind of like, kind of getting into the mindset of that state of being or whatever.
I love it. Okay, I'm going to ask you these two closing questions.
Yeah.
Talk about woo woo. They
Oh,
are.
that's all
Um,
I ever do, by the way. Yeah.
okay. Well, we'll see. So, if you were to describe your spiritual life right now,
Hmm.
not as a label, but as a landscape, what would it look like?
Like a physical landscape.
Hmm.
I've always felt like, oh, my dog needs to be let in. Um, the best analogy I've come up with for myself is that like within each one of us is a vast body of water that like is essentially untouchable. It's a perfect body of water. We pollute that water, other people pollute that water, but the water itself is always perfect. Like, and what humanity is, is you're letting me swim in your waters, you're swimming in mine. Like, it's all, I don't even, like, I had this written down at one point, but like, that water is going to be perfect.
Mm.
And even if it gets polluted, like that thing that's within us, it's untouchable. It's a perfect kind of love. It's a perfect kind of energy that like, and even if it gets polluted, you can clean pollution sometimes. Sometimes you just exist in the pollution, but the water itself is still pretty perfect.
I love that. You know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of not Buddhism, but this is maybe too real, but I used to get tripped out on the Ganges because I was like, it's gross though. It's so dirty.
For
And then
sure, for
I
sure.
was talking, I was watching this video of this Hindu person, a woman, talking about how meaningful it was for her to pilgrimage there. And they asked about that. And she just said, but when you're in it for this reason, it's not. Like
Yes.
it isn't.
Yes, for sure.
And I was like, okay, I kind of get that,
Oh,
like
for sure.
it
Yeah.
just isn't when you're in it for this reason.
Well, yeah, it's like that thing of like Galveston in Texas is like notoriously disgusting. It's like, it's like where the Mississippi River feeds into the Gulf of Mexico, basically. And it's just gross. But it's like when you're there, you just feel good. It's like,
Yeah.
it's just like, 'cause for me, that's where I grew, it's like where I grew up and stuff. So it's like, yeah,
It just isn't.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Is there a prayer or a verse or a is it sutra? Is that how you would
Yeah,
say it?
yeah, sutras.
Or a
Yeah.
line of poetry or anything that you sort of carry with you right now? Like, is there something in this moment that you've been thinking about? And I don't mean this hour, but this part of your life.
Not so much on the Buddhist side, but I grew up in an AA household. The Serenity prayer for me is like that's a Buddhist prayer basically. Like
Mm,
Lord grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot. All
yeah,
that the whole knot. And it's like, and I love the last line and the wisdom to know the difference. It's like
I
it's
do
such a
too.
great like I there's things I can change, there's things I can't change, but I need to just kind of let go and like just have the wisdom to know that it'll kind of like work itself out. And that's ultimately the path of serenity and peace is like letting go and whatnot.
Love that connection.
Yep.
Oh, Matthew, this was so great. I'm so appreciative. I don't know why you think you did. I mean, every single train that you were on went exactly where it should have. And I really appreciate it so much. This was a joy for me,
It was a
genuinely.
joy for me too. I'm like, we've known each other for almost a decade now virtually, and like, getting to meet you face to face
Yeah.
and we need to do this like more. Like, I'm really just a big believer just in general beyond the Buddhism stuff. Just like these phones, like they need to be put down. We need to like,
Oh, I want it gone. I want it
yeah,
over.
yeah, man. If I
I
could,
don't know that I'm ever going to be able to divorce myself for it, but I have like an internal prayer that somehow it
yes,
all just goes away.
yes, no. Like every single time I'm on like a like near body water, I'm like, just chuck it in there, just do it,
Yeah,
just
just
get rid of it.
yep. I have this thing where I'm on it and I realize I've wasted time and I'm like too much, like hours maybe
Yes,
on a Saturday or something. And it's like my biceps tense up where I'm like,
yes,
get out of my hand. I
yes,
want you out of my
exactly.
life.
No, it's ridiculous
It
for
is,
sure.
but I really do think of you as my friend for
Likewise.
real. And
Yes, absolutely.
it's nice to have this. I have for a long time thought it'd be that way, but this
Likewise.
feels like a confirmation, and I just really loved it. So
Absolutely. Yeah, same. Also, yeah, and we definitely need to do this again sometime really, really soon.
okay, well, thanks again. And do you want a copy of this? You don't
Oh,
have
just
to.
whatever. Yeah, I mean,
I'll just send you the link when I
sounds
do
good.
it
Sounds
on the
good.
private link on YouTube.
Okay,
Okay,
sounds
we'll
good.
see you soon.
See you. See you next time.
Okay, bye.